Okay, right, today, what we're doing today, sustainable project management today. Okay, so we've spoken about sustainability in general, we spoke about sustainability for business last week, and today I want to talk about sustainable project management. In a way there's two parts to that really. There's sustainability in project management. So how can projects be run more sustainably? But I tend to think of it as sustainable project management. A different kind of project management. A new kind of project management that builds and adapts on the traditional methods to make it better, frankly. And this is something that is starting to become more mainstream at the moment. It's still quite a new concept, which is why it's great to work with. People are still working this out at the moment. Sustainability in project management, sustainable project management. Okay, so today I'm going to touch a little bit on traditional project management. The stuff that you already know, hopefully. The stuff that Eric will teach you and Robert will teach you, and the kind of traditions of the project management industry or profession since the 1950s. We're going to talk a recap on why sustainable development is important. We're going to see what happens if we try to act more sustainably as project managers. And then we're going to see if we can redefine project management for the 21st century, or whatever it is now. This is based on a paper that I presented a couple of years ago at a conference we had here. Project management as if the world matters. Okay. Because that's the way I see this. If we're going to build a better world, be more sustainable, we need to rethink our fundamental systems, the way that we work, the way that business works, the way society works, and the way that projects work. And that's something I'm passionate about, as you can probably tell, and something that I've been working on for the last few years here. So what do we know about project management? The iron triangle, every project manager's best friend. Project management is about time, cost, and quality. Nothing else, apparently. That's all that matters. Well, I would disagree with that. And I wrote a paper last year basically saying this is rubbish. You can't just have a project that runs on three aspects. There are many other things. Sustainability, perhaps one of them, but there are other aspects as well. And a lot of literature is starting to reflect that now and saying, well, yeah, okay, well, maybe it's a, it's a first guess, if you like. This has been around since the 70s. Or maybe we should start thinking that there are other things as well that are more important than just time, cost, and quality. So what is a project? Well, the definitions. An individual or collaborative enterprise planned and designed to achieve an aim. Task-orientated. Planned to meet an aim. Very simple, one aim. The way that the Project Management Institute, the largest of our professional institutes globally, would define a project is a temporary endeavour undertaken to create a unique product, service or result. So the focus on the words temporary, defined start, defined end, another rule in project management. And it's unique, it's a one-off. Every project is unique. Okay, so that's how they would define it. I guess similarly, this is the Association for Project Management, the UK professional body, how they define it in their body of knowledge. Again, the same words, unique, transient endeavour undertaken to achieve a desired outcome. And I guess these definitions have come around trying to work out how a project relates to business. The unique and transient part, making it distinct from business. Because a business aim is not transient, is it? It's ongoing. A business is in business to continue to produce or to make money for itself. And quite often, the projects and the products will be the same. They'll just keep churning out the same things. The project is separate. It's unique and transient. Okay, so that's what we're told about what a project is and what it should be. The golden rules, if you like, that you will read and hear everywhere. So if that's what a project is, what is project management? What you guys are going to end up doing? Again, we get some useful definitions, perhaps, from the Project Management Institute. It's the application of knowledge, skills and tools, hopefully what we try to teach you here at some point, and techniques to project activities to meet project requirements. So it's, the day-to-day, the tools, the checklists, all these kind of things, the Gantt charts, the workflow, work breakdown systems, project initiation documents, All these kind of words that you have been learning over the last few years or will learn in the future. So it's a way of managing this project using these project management tools. Again, similarly, the Association for Project Management, it's a process by which projects are defined, they're planned, monitored, controlled and delivered so that agreed benefits are realised. Agreed benefits. Well, usually, in this case, they mean time, cost, quality. The agreed benefits, what your client wants, basically. Okay, so projects are unique, they're transitory. Project management is applying all of these tools and checklists and ways of monitoring projects. That's what we would learn of traditional project management. Temporary, it's about cost, it's about scope. It's short-term, transient. It's linear, we have a start and an end. It's about net present value, it's about accounting terms, it's narrow, it's one project, it's very specific. It's top down. Okay, the client tells the project manager what he wants, the project manager does it. It's fact-based. We use established facts, what we know now, what we know in the future. Internal rate of return, it's all about cost and accountancy. So that, I guess, is, in a nutshell, project management, or how we know project management is to be.
I'm missing people.
Yeah, I'm missing people too.
I'm missing,
Yeah.
not in the class, I mean in the...
Totally agree. Totally agree. Absolutely agree. Nowhere in any of the bodies of knowledge is there talk about people and culture. Should there be?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get to that. But there's not, and that's my point. This is what traditional project management talks about in the bodies of knowledge and in a lot of the traditional literature and books. It's about processes and planning and delivering and monitoring. It's not about people and culture and softer things, traditionally. But yes, I totally agree with you, and we'll get to that. My argument is it's more about people than it is about any of this stuff.
What does IRR stands for?
IRR, internal rate of return. Net present value, it's about cost-benefit analysis. It's about making money and making return on your investment. Okay? All these very hard-based concepts. But of course, project management is important, which is why you're here. Why we have one of the largest masters groups in the university of people wanting to be project managers. It's important. It's important because projects and project management are a crucial activity of organisations. An organisation and business could not exist without project management. And I like to think, I always say, projects are the business of doing business. You have organisational aims, your client has a need. How do you actually make that a reality? Usually, projects. Discrete projects, or a number of projects put together in a portfolio. Projects are how organisations deliver their new products, their services, how they deliver change. That's going back to people a little bit. Going through a massive organisational change here at the university as we restructure at the moment. One of the project managers who's working on that and working on the processes and trying to help us through that change system was sitting where you were 3 years ago. Okay? That's how good you guys can be. You can be managing organisational change in an organisation where we have 300,000 students and 30,000 staff. Okay? Projects are about change. It's about getting from one state to another state, whether that's from no products to products, new product delivery, whether it's from an old structure to a new structure. Projects are always about change. Okay, so that's project management. Quick recap on sustainable development. Remember, hopefully you remember this, the enduring kind of definition, development that meets the needs of the present now, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Grohan and Brundtland, World Commission for Environmental Development in 1987. And then we have the more business-focused definition. It's about adopting business strategies and activities that meet the needs of the enterprise and its stakeholders today, so meeting your client and your organisation's needs, whilst protecting, sustaining and enhancing the human and natural resources that will be needed in the future, for other projects perhaps, for business perhaps. So that was the International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD. So sustainable development, okay. And we've learned it's about environment, of course, also about society and also about the economy. We often say you have to have all these three at least harmonised before we can achieve truly sustainable development. So sustainability, what's that about then? Okay, so basically what I've talked about is about the environment, it's about society, people, it's about life cycle, it's about the future, It's about the triple bottom line, so making a profit and making an environmental contribution. It's about development, progressing as a society, as people, becoming more affluent, becoming less poor. It's about precautionary. Precautionary principle is one of the key tenets in sustainable development. It says, if we're not sure that something is going to cause harm, but we think it might, maybe it's best not to do it anyway. Okay, the precautionary principle. It's about bottom up. It's about people who you work for, people who work for you. It's about society, building society from the bottom. It's complicated. All these three aspects of it, and trying to bring it into business is even more complicated. When I say society to you, you all think of completely different things. What does society mean to you? What does environment mean to you? It's fuzzy, it's hard to define. It's about the planet, it's about people, and it's long term, meeting the needs of the present whilst allowing future generations to meet their own needs. So it's important. It's important because the choices we make today will affect the future, of course. Everything we do now will be here as a legacy for us. It's about maintaining ecosystem services without which we cannot survive, the environmental side of things. We cannot have clean water, cannot have food, cannot regulate our own climate to be habitable for ourselves. It's about creating a more equitable and just society. It's about eradicating poverty. It's about allowing people to have the same opportunities throughout the world, regardless of where you live, what your gender is, what your culture is. And it's about sustaining human development. It's an anthropocentric view, really. It's not about just putting the earth back as it was just for nature's sake. It's about allowing us to develop as human beings and as people. So sustainability is important as well. Okay, so what happens if we put the two together? Project management plus sustainable development. How do they work? They work by not pressing the wrong mouse button. How do they work then? Okay, on the left, project management. Short-term orientated. It's about sponsors, stakeholders. Stakeholders are usually your shareholders because they're the people who control the money. It's about deliverables, result-orientated, key performance indicators, scope, time, budget, reduced complexity, systematic, making everything very simple, tick box checklist, easy to define. Top-down decision-making, project manager's king. You get to rule the roost about everybody else. It's fact-based, making decisions based on the best information you have at the time. It's linear, mathematical, it's about these hard accounting principles. But then we move to sustainable development, which is long-term orientated rather than short-term orientated. It's about current and future generations. It's not just about shareholders and stakeholders. One of the things we talk about when we talk about stakeholders and sustainability, stakeholders usually defined traditionally as someone who's affected by the project. Okay? So that might be your shareholders in terms of income, might be the tenants if it's a building, might be us if we're producing the product, might be the workers. In the sustainable development point of view, every single person on the planet is a stakeholder. If you're producing carbon and you're contributing to climate change, then all of us have got a stake in what's happening in your project. How do we manage that? Difficult. It's life cycle orientated. There is no end. It's ongoing. If we produce a product, it will need to be broken down, it will need to be deconstructed, it will go into a landfill. It's a whole cycle. It's about people, planet, profit, as well as scope, time and budget. It's increasingly complex. It's horrendously complex. Social sustainability, what does that mean? And all the literature will say social sustainability, really important. How do we do it? Oh, you're not really sure. It's about bottom-up consensus making, about decision making which involves the people you are working with and you as employees. It's precautionary. Yes, we have some facts, but at the same time we're not really sure what's going to happen in the future. Perhaps we should try and take some steps to kind of minimise that risk. It's systematic. It's about ecosystems, and it's about the triple bottom line: planet, people, profit, not just accounting rates of return. So do the two go together? It's a bit of a strange marriage, isn't it? It's a bit difficult. And there are a lot of people who say, well, project management and sustainable development are totally at odds. You cannot reconcile the two. They're completely different. This is business and this is hippie stuff. It doesn't work. However, this is what we need to do. We need to find a way to make all of this tally with this and vice versa. And if you've done the reading yet, this is in the paper I gave you, a guy called Gilbert Silvers, who's a professor at a university. I think it's Delft. It's the university in the Netherlands, I think it's Delft, who's working in this area as well. But it's not just the academics who are talking about this, and there's a few of us now. There's a critical mass gaining of people that are talking about how to build sustainable development into projects. It's also coming from the front line, from the project managers, from the field. This is one of those academic fields, project management, where the industry is quite often ahead of academia. It shouldn't really be that way. The academics should be working at the cutting edge of everything and trying to bring that into industry. It's the opposite in business quite often. Business is leading and saying, hey, can you help us generate some ideas for this? So some views from the field. This first guy, Gregory Ballestero, he was the president of the Project Management Institute for many, many years, so maybe one of the most important project managers of his time, heading the largest professional organisation for many years. He's now a consultant, he retired last year. And he said towards the end of his tenure, project managers need to consider environmental and social constraints as part of the planning process and identify risks, challenges and opportunities to the company before the project is launched. He started to talk about sustainability 5 years ago and started to say this is the greatest challenge this industry is facing. So if you ignore all of this hippie social stuff I'm telling you, all this sustainable development thing, your industry, the heads of your industry are saying, yeah, okay, perhaps this is important. Mary McKinley, she's an adjunct professor of project management in Lille, and she also runs a consultancy down in the south which looks at complex projects and projects in the defence industry. Highly experienced project manager, many, many years working on defence projects, building things like Eurofighters. She came here last year actually and she did a talk in this lecture theatre for Roberts on projects and portfolios. Very nice to see a very high level woman project manager talking to people who's at the top of her game. And she's talked about the further development of the project management profession requires project managers to take responsibility for project for sustainability. So again, project managers are saying, we need to deal with this now. This is a report, the Association for Sustainable Communities. This one's a construction-based report in the UK. And they looked a number of years back to see how we could build sustainable communities. We have an aspiration in the UK to build zero carbon housing by the year 2016. Zero carbon. No carbon from the houses that you live in. Zero carbon buildings from 2019. So building a university, zero carbon in construction and operation. Very, very stringent targets. And we looked to see if we could do this. Do we have the skills to do this? Can you guess what the answer was? No, we don't have the skills to do this. And one of the things they said was, delivery of sustainable communities will depend on embedding the principles and understanding in the approach to project management and amongst project management professionals. I've had a mixed career, as some of you might know, but my main career has been working with housing and working in construction. And in my view, from my experience, project managers are the most important people in that industry because they're the people that actually have to make things happen, make the decisions, and have to know who to bring to the table and when, who to build into your team. And there's a verification of that there from the Academy of Sustainable Communities. So the industry is saying it's important. And this is Tom Taylor. He was head of the APM for many, many years in the UK. He's just actually presented a paper a couple of months ago on sustainability and project management, which I'll probably send out to you at some point. And he again says, project managers are ideally placed to make contributions to sustainability practice. So we're not the problem, we're the solution. And I firmly believe that if we can get our knowledge right and our skills right and understand how to apply this, then we can start to make this difference. So if you don't believe in any of this stuff I've talked about for sustainability and saving bunnies and rabbits and trees, your industry is saying to you, this is what you need. If the industry says that to you, where are the jobs going to be? In this area, okay? So listen to what I'm saying so you can get a better job. That's my book today. Okay, so sustainability and project management, how are we doing? What are we working on? How are we trying to reconcile these two completely opposing forces when you look at them like that? And we are trying to do that at the moment. Current state of the research. We're trying to work out how we can integrate these principles of sustainable development with the principles of project management. We're trying to evolve the profession. We're trying to take what we already know and build on it to improve it. Evolution. Trying to evolve to become more sustainable project managers. People working in this area, like Shabner and Brent, two South African academics, looking at project management in manufacturing. Gilbert Silvius and Ron Schipper in Europe, Roland Garris as well. These three guys, ex-consultants now working in academia, trying very hard to reconcile, and some dodgy guy at the bottom there, who's freeloading on their work. Don't know who that is. In the industry, the book that I gave, one of the books I put on the reading list, Green Project Management, some of you probably have seen that, written by a couple of guys, Ralph Shirley, Dave Mossman. Two American project managers, very experienced, written an industry-based book on green project management. Tom Taylor, the APM, the PMI, everybody's trying to work to integrate these principles together. And we've started to get quite good at this conceptually. And you'll see that. We've got some good ideas. We're not making it work operationally yet. That's the next stage, is to try to take these principles and make them work. Ideas for the thesis there, you see. So we're trying to evolve the profession. However, I believe more strongly that we need to move towards revolution. Away from this evolving, trying to incremental development, trying to improve our processes. I prefer to think, well, what if our processes aren't right in the first place? That's sacrilege usually in any organisation. What if we need to start again and rethink what we're doing? And I kind of think in a way, that's what we need to do with sustainable project management. We don't need to be tied to the old definitions, we need to make our new ones. As long as we achieve the same outcomes with a better sustainability agenda as well, then surely we should try to do so. So my kind of thesis is that sustainable project management is different. And this is my definition of sustainable project management. You probably see where I've stolen it from. It's an endeavour undertaken to achieve a desired transient outcome whilst protecting, sustaining and enhancing the human and natural resources required for future generations to meet their needs. So we can try to still achieve these outcomes, but at the same time try to achieve these sustainability issues. There isn't a definition of what a sustainable project is at the moment. It's debated at the moment in the literature. We don't know. But I would argue that we can take what we know about business sustainable development and apply it loosely to project management. So let's look at some of these aspects. What about sustainability and project cost? Well, sustainable development or sustainable project management focuses on continually improving the environmental and sustainability of all resources consumed on a project. So every resource you use, you try to refine it, you try to ensure that it's still going to be there for you to use that resource in the future. That's just good management for starters. I mean, why would you build something if you knew you're going to run out of resources? You'd start to maybe move to different kinds of materials or different ways of working. The cost of incorporating sustainable thinking into projects, moving the cost of incorporating quality, prevention costs, appraisal costs and failure costs. One of the things I'll try and introduce you to is sustainability is free, as I said at one point. It used to be said that quality would be too expensive. We can't build quality projects, it's too expensive. Are you mad? That was what the case was in the 50s, until we started to try and do it. And through improvements in efficiencies and failure costs, so if we build something and it's of the wrong quality and we have to start again. Appraisal costs, preventing pollution. If we pollute somewhere, we have to pay a fine for doing so. If we can engineer all this out in the first place, all of that cost that we've had to do there come back into the project by not having to pay these fines or not having to pay for rework or pay to rebuild something that was of the insufficient quality. There are costs associated with reviewing and monitoring of sustainability, of course, data analysis, collection, evaluating the project, and then there are the costs of failure. So the reason for investing in sustainability in the first place is to stop failure. Failure in projects is inherent in some projects. It's huge. Some of you will do your thesis on it. It's such a big topic. Why do projects fail? And a lot of them do. And one of the things I would argue is by building sustainability into your project will reduce cost of failure. If we look at why projects fail, cost overruns, lack of resources, lack of quality, staff turnover, people not buying into what you're doing. What I'm trying to get across to you is that by addressing these things, you're building a more sustainable project. So some of these costs are difficult to quantify. However, in most cases, the cost of what would have been failures, such as recycling, reuse and rework, and external losses, such as credibility, warranty, far outweigh the prevention costs. So you spend up front to save further down the line. Sustainable project cost. The project life cycle, this top one here, again, this is the one you'll see in all the books. It has a start, but has an end. Thank you very much, I've done my job, I'm out of the building, I've gone. Next project, please. Well, I would argue that sustainable project management can't work like that. Nothing ends, does it? Nothing ever ends. Your project will be finished, you'll have built your building, you'll have designed your product, but that product, that building, that service will endure. You need to think about this part here, this legacy stage. What's going to happen after the project completes? You don't have to be working there, you still finish your project and you on to the next one, but the decisions you make by considering this will be different to the decisions you make when you don't consider this. So applying sustainability to life cycle thinking is essential during every stage of a project, because the environmental, social impact and economic impacts will be different. So there are many ways to portray this life cycle. This is the APM way actually. Initiation, concept, definition, mobilization, implementation and close. So this legacy stage is important. And I think one of the examples I used was building a product out of some particular metal. I mean, building it out of steel, which is recyclable, over aluminium, which is takes a lot of energy to recycle. If you're thinking about this part, decommissioning your project, then you will make different decisions at this stage here, is the argument. One of the reasons why the project to build the Olympic Games was considered such a success is they considered legacy right at the start. We had a student do a thesis on that 2 years ago. They planned for legacy right here. And it was the first Olympics ever to have a positive legacy. Every other Olympics ever since has always had a negative legacy in terms of the infrastructure they put in place not being used afterwards, being pulled down, not having a kind of lasting kind of effect on the environment that it went into. The Olympics were built with the very first notion of redefining a particular area of London, East Stratford, which was a very poor area. So the first thing they said was, our legacy will be a better East Stratford. And it's what they've achieved according to all of the papers and the press that's come out of it. So planning for legacy is important in sustainable project management. The project cycle of sustainability. This is your usual cycle in manufacturing, okay? You have an idea, you want to build something, an iPhone maybe, I don't know, whatever. You plan how you're going to do that. You manufacture it. You deploy it out, so you put it in the shops, it gets sold, and that's it. Your project's finished. And that cycle ends, if you like. Whereas in sustainability, that doesn't happen. We get to the deployment phase, the iPhone's bought. It's used. It comes to the end of its life, we recycle it. And then there's a legacy left, there was no legacy. If there's not planned for here, we might make that out of a particular material which is non-recoverable. We get to this place here, and we've lost that, it's gone. It's in a landfill, we haven't used it. So quite often now, well the iPhones is a good example actually, they're planned for this to close this cycle as well. You buy an iPhone, you use it, you get to the end of your life, you can either sell it online and they can recover the costs, and now you can take your iPhone back to the Apple store, and they'll take it off your hands and give you a new one, and they'll recover some of the precious metals which are scarce in there. It's about cost saving for them as well, of course. They can reuse that material if they haven't got the costs of getting the virgin material. So you need to think about this stage in sustainable project management as well as this stage. Yeah. Environmental scope. So understanding the scope of your project, where does it start and where does it end? Who is effective? Go back to this stakeholder use. Understanding and controlling the scope of the project is at the core. It's the first thing you will do. Okay, where's my responsibility lies? What do I have to do here? Where's the start? Where's the boundaries? That's what you'll be looking for. Project managers who can do that are the best. The ones who can only do what they need to do to achieve the project, minimise resources, maximise efficiency, they're the best ones. The environmental scope of the project comes back to this idea of life cycle thinking. So visualising what's happening at every single stage in your project and considering the particular environmental consequences. So what we need to do is expand our view. So what happens after project closure to the time the project is disposed of? So many of these considerations you will make during those other stages will have effects in terms of health, community and environment and resource. One of the think terms we have, one of the tools we can use is environmental impact assessment. So you're looking through every stage of manufacturing that iPhone, you're trying to work out where the environmental and social impacts are. Is it in the glass? Is it in the iridium? Is it in the metals, the precious metals? Is it in the plastics? Where is it used? Is it in the deployment? How do we get it out to market? Do we ship it? Do we trade it? Do we fly it? Looking at every single stage, then trying to plan to minimise that. So that is part of the environmental scope. It's also good planning in terms of cost. If you look at every single aspect of your project lifecycle, you can reduce cost. Sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not common. And the big one again, environmental risks, risk management. I don't know if you've done risk yet, but you will learn that risks can be positive and negative. Okay? They can be threats and opportunities. Negative risks are threats, positive risks are opportunities. Project managers can recognise that many of the environmental aspects of their projects are project risks, threats and opportunities. So in the initial phase, you need to comply with environmental regulations. So traditional risk planning, what do we need to do in order not to get fined? Okay, what are our boundaries? What are the legislation we're working with? Then we move on to this kind of more proactive approach, environmental risk management, reducing the liabilities, minimising the cost of regulatory compliance. So it used to be that back in the day we used to put a big chunk of money around for risk management. So if we cause a problem, it's okay, we've got some contingency money, we'll pay our way out of it. Now we're trying to get away from that, we're going to the opposite, saying be more proactive. How can we stop this happening in the first place? Companies are recognising that the implementation of sustainable project strategies can lead to new opportunities, improved results, and the impacts of poor risk management are well documented. So of course that one at the bottom there, BP, Deepwater Horizon, a few years ago. It's fascinating if you read the literature that's come out of that, the academic literature on risk management. And one of the big problems is they knew there was a risk of this particular event happening. They knew there was a risk of this blowout. They documented it. However, they felt that the costs of having to deal with that outweighed the cost of having to put the measures in place to stop it in the first place. Okay, from a technical point of view. So what happens if this blows out? Okay, well what we can do is we can go back and we can refit it. But they didn't have a comprehensive plan for how to deal with this. They hadn't managed the risk of how they could go back and put this right in time. And it's cost them, I don't know what the figure is now, but we're talking about hundreds of billions of pounds and growing that they've lost of business. Not to mention the goodwill that they've lost in operating. BP go knocking on the door now of a nation, say, can we come and drill in your waters? Ooh, I'm not really sure about that, Mr. BP. So risk management, and this was a classic failure of risk management. They hadn't factored in the environmental costs either. They looked at the cost of replacing the parts and the pieces, but they hadn't looked at the cost of replacing the environmental damage that they did. So risk management is sustainable project management. And stakeholders, finally. When considering the project through an environmental lens, sustainable project has a much wider list of stakeholders than traditional projects. So it may affect the interactions between stakeholders as well. So the PMI says a stakeholder is anyone who's affected in any way by a project. So I would argue that every single person is affected by every single project in some way. I can't think of any project that's done in a vacuum that doesn't use resources, which we all have a right to, that doesn't emit carbon, which affects us all, which doesn't add or detract from the global economy, which affects us all. So arguably, we're all stakeholders. Okay, we can't manage every single person, but we can plan with that view in mind. And types of sustainable projects. This comes from the Maltzman and Shirley book, who say that there are 4 types of projects. There's ones that are green by definition. So you could argue perhaps that building a wind farm out at sea, Siemens for instance, is sustainable by definition. The output is, it's a sustainable project, it's creating green energy. You could argue that green by project impact. So building a car, is building a car green? Is it a sustainable thing to do? Well, a lot of people would say, well, no, because it's automobiles and it's polluting. In this case, building an electric car. So the actual project itself isn't necessarily green, but the impact of the project is producing a car which has lower emissions than a normal car. You have green by product impact. So again, the project is not traditionally sustainable. This is to build something I worked on, a police station in North Tyneside, which is built to BREEAM Excellent, which at the time was a very high sustainable rating for the building. So the project itself wasn't meant to be green, but the actual impact of it was at the end a sustainable building, used less resources. And then you can have green in general. So Maltzman and Shirley would argue that every single project could be green in the way that you run it. So if we go back to, what they call the arms company, BAE Systems down the road, great environmental management plans, they're making bombs, is that sustainable? Maybe, maybe not. However, the way in which they run that business can be sustainable. Their operations, their office, the way they treat their staff, the way they treat their stakeholders, the resources that they use. There was another thing I read recently about oil companies. Can oil companies be sustainable? BP and people like that will tell you that they can be, and they are. And again, I would argue that they can be in their operations, but maybe not at the end point of what they're actually producing. So every single project can have sustainability built in, and should have. And the role of you guys as project managers will change depending on what kind of project you're working on. So, green by definition, high focus on sustainability. The role of you is pretty easy from a sustainability point of view. You don't have to do a lot because what you're doing inherently is sustainable. As you move up towards green in general, where it's an inherently non-sustainable project you're doing, you have to have more input. So the degree to which the project manager must assert the principles of sustainable project management differs depending on the type of project. Project manager needs to have their stronger focus depending on the sustainability of the project. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction to sustainable project management. We'll do some more in the lectures, seminars, and hopefully you'll read the papers. This is what we're here to learn about. This is the core of it now, sustainable project management. So we know that project management is important, which is good news for you guys, because you're going to be project managers. Sustainable development is important, which is good news for me, because that's where I work. Traditionally defined project management is incompatible with the principles of sustainable development. Maybe this evolution won't work. Maybe we do need a revolution. Sustainable project management, this new paradigm offers a new perspective that places sustainability principles at the heart of project management processes. Or that's at least my argument. And everything we do from now on will build on that. So we'll have a look and start to think about, okay, so let's think about how we build a sustainable project. What do we need to do at the planning stage? What do we need to do at the development initiation stage? What do we do during the project? What do we do at the end? So we'll try to look at some tools, because project managers like tools, I know that. We like people, but we like tools as well. And see how we can actually build some of these principles into project management as we go forward. Okay, sermon over. See you in the seminars.
Alex, you know that Molson and Shirley book?
Yeah.
Whenever I've looked at it to buy the book on the internet and it says 2010.
Yeah.
Now, that says 2011.